Secret Origins panel. It's exciting. The con is completely sold out, so congratulate yourselves and please give yourselves a round of applause for even making it here. I'm now going to awkwardly clip this onto myself, so apologies. All right. And then turn around so the wire doesn't get tangled. So let me just make sure that the folks watching on this live stream can see this. And I apologize for all the weird ruffling noises. Can you guys all hear okay? Great. Okay, first and foremost, thank you for coming to the Secret Origins panel. And today we have a pretty amazing guest. Of course, you know him from things like Welcome to Hoxford. You know him probably from 30 Days of Night or a multitude of other projects he's been involved with, including the upcoming 10 Grand. Please welcome Ben Templesmith.
Rustling noises. Like, is this good? Is this good?
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. Hi. This is my interview voice now too.
Ben, you are the best dressed panelist so far in the entire Secret Origins series.
Well, in 2002, Grant Morrison, I saw him for the first time at a con, and he was in a blue pinstripe suit. So he stood out, and I figured, oh, I should wear a suit then. It's a good style thing, and it gets you noticed more, and it's professional because you're at a con meeting people that help pay my rent, so and I can work in my underwear. So then a few other people started doing it, so I had to go to a three-piece suit. So no one's matched that yet so far.
Well, you know, the theme of this panel series is Secret Origins, and I won't belabor it too much because I know you've discussed it a lot, but
I don't have a secret origin, you know that, right?
No, I know, but I was going to say...
My dad. They liked each other.
What was the first comic you ever paid to do artwork for, and how did you get that gig?
Okay. The first comic I ever did that I was paid to do was an adaptation, which never finished, of Shakespeare's Hamlet.
Really? And who was that with? Who was doing
I forget the name of anything to do with it. It was back when online comics, internet comics, were the first beginning of them, then they stopped. It was going to be a PDF comic, and he paid me, and then so it was an advance on royalties. And the whole thing never really finished. He put it out and made like bugger all money. No one knew who I was, but I got through the first scene, I think. So I did like 50, 60 pages of Hamlet. I don't have the files anymore. But then later on in life, I had a career, blah blah blah. I'm not going to talk about that. And it was an advance in royalty, so technically, because I didn't do anything, ethically especially, I could pay him back. And like, he's like, oh, you know, I really need the money back, technically. It was like weird, awkward things like, no, here's your money back. Because he helped get me into comics in a career, so I was like, I paid him back.
Wow.
For my first job, so it was all right.
So you did a work for hire and then wound up paying the guy who paid you his money?
Well, it was like an advance on royalties thing.
Okay, gotcha.
But it never really went anywhere. It was a tiny amount of money, but it meant a lot to me as like a 22-year-old.
I feel like people will now be scouring the internet to find your lost Hamlet work.
There's little bits of it out there somewhere, but my hard drive crashed, so I don't have the art anymore.
And then you went to Image, correct, and did Hellspawn? Is that correct? Or maybe not?
Well, because your question was about the first paid work, the first actual work I ever did was I was a colorist on Charlie Adlard.
Really?
For Code Flesh with Joe Casey.
Wow.
Because Joe wanted me. This is a secret origin. But I didn't get paid for it. It was so I could get a name credit, so I would look good for Vertigo, because Joe was looking for Ashley Wood, and he couldn't get Ashley Wood. That's what he told me. He was pitching a Vertigo thing, miniseries. He couldn't get, but he found me online, and like, oh, Ash is busy. This guy looks a bit like him.
That's
Rustling
me.
noises. To convince them that I could do a book with them, I had to have some sort of name credit, so he got me to color a couple issues of the thing. But here's the stupid, boring thing. If it's boring, to shout out, it's boring. I colored one issue, it was a thing. by the next issue, the sales were not good on it, that they couldn't do colour anymore, so they went black and white. But no one told me. So all I did was grey tones, apparently, on this, because they swapped all the colours to grey. But my first thing was colouring Charlie Adlard, who I think is, do you know who he is now? He does that little book.
The Walking Dead,
Yeah.
I think.
He's a super nice guy, too. But yeah, Joe technically got me to start. That never saw print either, because the editor was let go or whatever, shenanigans going on at Vertigo. And all her projects that had not seen print at that point were cancelled. So it was just, what do you call it?
Scrapped.
Shit canned.
Or shake hand, yeah.
That's the Simon Bisley word of shit canned.
Right.
Sorry.
Feel free.
I'm Australian.
If the internet is not prepared for profanity, the internet has been sadly asleep for the last 10 years.
So I got 30 pages in. They paid me though, but that never saw the light of day. And I don't have those files either because that was on the same computer. Right. But at the same time as that was happening, I got a job doing Hellspawn because I broke in twice by accident just because of the internet. And that one actually went somewhere, and that was with Steve Niles, and then we got bored, and then we did 30 Days of Night, and blah, blah, blah.
Right, so
The end.
30 Days of Night, you know, obviously became an immense phenomenon, a feature film, everything else. When you started, did you guys have any expectations other than, hey, we're just going to do a cool vampire book?
I was just happy to be in print. Because it was literally like I'd probably done 2 issues of Hellspawn before that started coming out, and I was just still happy to smell the print on a comic that, like, wow, I did that and it came out. Because I was a little kid in Australia, well, a 6-foot kid in Australia who, you know, had never even been to America. You guys are like, wow, are you on the TV and the movies? You have accents? You have accents. So I was just enamored by that. And then by the third issue, I was getting an instant message conversation, because that was big back then. Now I'm in here and I text. But he said, oh, Sam Raimi's optioned it, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, that's cool. But I'm doing comics. So.
You know, what sort of fed into that really iconic smile, the vampire, those vampire teeth, is the one thing that almost everyone remembers.
It's my inability to draw properly. It is. I'm not kidding. I just draw the way I draw. I don't know, I like drawing. Apparently I draw emotional teeth. That's what people told me. Your guess is as good as mine. I really don't know. It's whatever I like to draw, and I draw it that way, in my style.
I'd heard, and maybe this is apocryphal, that the comic was actually optioned before much of it was even read, based on that sort of iconic teeth image. People saw that cover and were sort of intrigued enough to start looking seriously into optioning the book before.
So far as I know, the way it went, even though I wasn't in the room, they were doing meetings and Hollywood studio bullshit stuff. I call it bullshit stuff. With the money people. Hollywood has money people, that's most of Hollywood. And then the creative people have to like beg and they had a little pin-up book of all the character sketches and stuff I'd done, and they were showing that to studio people. And I have since learned that the reason that Sam Raimi's company optioned it from his partner, who actually told me, because I was curious, like, what the fuck did you option this bullshit?
Right.
And I'm sorry about the swearing.
Go for it.
Well, they said 50% because of the concept, because 30 Days of Night, which is more than, it's actually 60-something up there in the Arctic. But, and vampires, blah, 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 that's kind of cool.
Right.
And the other one was like, well, the art really sold it, the atmosphere, and we got a really good sense of what the hell we could do. So it was 50-50 on that. But I think Steve had actually written it as a screenplay and had tried to shop it around earlier, long before he even met me. Didn't really have any bites. And then this thing happened. The book was up to like issue 2 of 3 issues by when they were actually doing that, I think. But so it was really good because the book sold like crap. And I'm probably going into too much detail now.
No.
But the initial issues sold like crap. They sold like 3,000 copies, which was actually pretty good back then. But not enough to make money. And so for the first issue, the company came back to us and said, look, Ben, we can't afford to pay you the small amount that they were to finish the book. But if you do want to finish it, we'll still print it. I'm like, of course I'm doing it. It's a comic. It's my first comic. Well, second comic. So I did that. And by the 3rd issue, it had been optioned, which was great because that meant when the collection came out, the actual trade that everyone knows about now, that's when we took advantage of the hype and the bullshit. Because it was a brand new, comics hadn't really been optioned outside of maybe superhero stuff. It was a big news at the time because, I don't know, people like shiny things. So it was a really big thing, and that's how I got a career and a name of any kind. and apparently I'm still here.
Well, no, it is interesting because 30 Days of Night, you know, there were sort of a few comics that were outliers. Weirdly, History of Violence and Road to Perdition were comics as well.
Most people don't know that.
Yeah,
That's the sad thing.
but it's interesting because at that time, this whole wave hadn't started. This wave of everything being optioned, of people, you know, I know people at Image that like get calls from production companies off the solicitations. There are actually production companies that get previews and read through it for log lines and go, oh, that log line looks like we can make a movie out of it. Let's talk to that guy. So you guys kind of were at the beginning of a wave that sort of changed portions of the industry.
Kind of, yeah. But and with all of that stuff, though, it kind of, I'm a jaded old man now about all that. Because it really matters, like, if you can do a comic and have anyone, you'll have an option on it. Someone will option it, but they're usually these small producer guys or small little companies that, and they don't pay you much. It's like it's an option. It doesn't mean it'll happen. And that most people forget that. So when the PR comes out, it's like, well, it depends who options it. If it's a major studio, yeah, you get a lot of money and
Right.
it probably might get made. Or if it's a known guy in Hollywood who actually can get financing, it might get made. But there's not that much of that. But when it happens, that's big news.
Yeah.
But everyone gets an option now, really. Even me on the shit I've written. It's stupid. Never got made though. But yeah, 30 Days a Night took 5 years in production because they
Really?
didn't know what to do with it. They didn't. And then it took David Slade to come on as director and literally say, how about we make it about the book? Because they were getting to the point where the studio wanted, you know, vampiric polar bears and monkeys.
Yeah, there were vampire monkeys in one of the
Like
drafts.
they were in a different direction, and then he brought it back, and they actually, you know, got into proper pre-production and went forward.
Were you involved at all in doing designs? I know, like, for example, someone like Mike Mignola was very closely associated with Hellboy. No? That seems
No.
crazy.
It might
And
be
yet,
crazy.
totally
I had,
predictable.
at the time, I had no contacts in Hollywood, and the publisher wasn't, I guess, not interested in pushing. I mean, I went to the set. I had a great time. I met the director. I since learned that I could have done concept work and stuff, but I had no idea, and I was in Australia at the time. So it was just a lack of communication. Didn't
Gotcha.
know. And I turned up 2 days too late to have a cameo in the film.
Oh no, would you have been a vampire or a townsperson?
Something. I don't know.
Well,
Depressed enough I didn't make it, but yeah.
you guys obviously followed up 30 Days a Night with the sequel and then Criminal Macabre.
Well, 30 Days has like had endless sequels.
Right,
now.
but I mean the ones that you worked on specifically.
Yeah, we did a trilogy, like of the main thing, I guess, if you want to call it. And then I was like, that's enough vampires for me because I don't want to be the Gary Coleman of,
Right.
you know, known for this one thing ever, like for nothing else.
Right.
So I wanted to try and do new things. But yeah, at around the same time, because 30 Days was a huge success, for some reason, I said, yeah, I'll do Steve's Criminal Macabre as well, which is his own thing.
Right.
And he's had various artists do it now too. But I did 1 or 2 stories for it, I think. That was the next comic I did. Which was good.
Absolutely. I have a question about your collaboration with Warren Ellis on Fell over at Image.
Uh-oh.
No,
Hi, Warren.
that comic had a really interesting layout. It was. Can you talk a little bit about that very specific sort of grid and the way it worked?
Okay.
Is that all right?
I love talking theory and this stuff and storytelling. It's cool with you guys.
Are you? How
Did
many
you know
folks
Fell?
out there are familiar with Fell? It's okay. It's a
It might
great,
come back one
great comic.
It might come back one day. I know it's my content. I don't know. Yeah, he had the whole concept for him was a 9-panel grid format, so that it affects pacing and you can pack a lot more story into the thing, as opposed to a Rob Liefeld comic where it's a splash page every 2 pages.
Right.
Not to say, you know, that sometimes that works.
Yep.
That's great, but that wasn't the aim of it. So it was 16 pages, really dirt cheap, 9-panel grid, experiment with pacing and you know, when it's 9 panels, 3 panels on the bottom as 1 panel, like a tier, actually looks really big and is a really good storytelling device. It sort of really taught me a lot. Warren taught me a lot how to tell a comic by constraining me to do that. And there's still a lot of fun. There's a lot of work.
Were the Post-it note things your idea that kind of go
No.
in there?
I can't claim any credit for any of that. He would tell me what he wants in a shot and then just let me go to town on it to make it interesting. So he wouldn't like, well, this has to be a medium shot and you see this in the far left corner and blah, 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 which some writers do, I guess. But he just said, yeah, it's a guy in a suit chatting to a chick. Go for it. Do what you want in that panel. But the rest of it was so constrained. So, and the posters were his idea. As he came up with the Snowtown tag too, if you know the S with the cross through it. I didn't do that. He told me what to do. It's all Warren.
It's really interesting though, because I think there's someone that like got the Snowtown tag tattoo, right?
I'm good friends with 2 people that have it.
Yeah.
And I know a bunch of others too.
That's amazing. You have a ton of creator-owned work and work that, well, Welcome to Hoxford, correct?
Which
Wormwood.
you reviewed once.
The werewolves.
I know, it was all right.
I was going to ask you, it's interesting because obviously, you were the vampire guy for a while, and then you did the werewolf comic, Hoxford, which is sort of this heightened werewolf. I'm going to do a terrible job of summarizing, but werewolves in a prison for...
That was the catch. It was like, it's a prison run by werewolves. I don't know. It turns out that they're werewolves, and like, so it's the worst of the worst against werewolves, and like, who do you feel sorry for? No one.
Right. The doctor, maybe.
Pretty much, that was the only reason I did that comic was because I was working with the actual publisher at the time, like in their office, because I'd moved to America, and the publisher themselves had like, well, we have this Hollywood guy who's written a werewolf script. We want to turn it into a comic, which is a classic way of trying to get it.
Right.
I'm like, well, you know what? What if I have my own werewolf story that I could come up with? I'm like, yeah, do that instead then. So I did. And it got a film option as well. So that was all good. It didn't get made. But if you've not seen it, technically it's a fan film, but it was made by a French director, like a 15-minute long short film preview with lots of CGI. It's sort of like Sin City, but in my style, with live action.
Really?
Yeah.
That sounds
it's on Vimeo
fantastic.
for free. It's all right. It'll never get made, but he made it. And it stars the guy who was Jason Fleming, who's been in a whole bunch of films like Lock, Stock, Two Smoking Barrels. He was in X-Men First Class as one of the red guy, the villain.
Oh, right. Okay. Azazel. Yeah. Azazel. Thank you.
Azazel Basil. Anyway, he's super cool. And Dexter Fletcher, who's, if you like British TV, you know who he is.
Was that made and then someone sent you an email and said, oh, by the way, we made this, or were you consulted on it at all?
He wanted me involved in it, but apparently, technically, I had to stay away because the publisher themselves were trying to, or the agents were trying to sell it and
right.
muddied the waters or something. So I knew this guy was doing it. It looked amazing. He spent like $100,000 on it.
Wow.
But he's got an agent and he's probably got a Hollywood career now. Because of that work, it got him some attention.
It seems like the fan film thing is leading to
He did a great Batman fan film first, which was good too. So.
Nice.
But anyway, that is the closest thing of pure me to be egotistical on film. So if you look up Welcome to Hoxford video movie trailer, and it'll be there.
You also did Wormwood, Gentleman Corpse, and Singularity 7. Can you talk a little bit about those projects?
Singularity 7 was my first attempt at writing. I call it an experiment. It's all right. It was me trying to be the Matrix and various cyberpunky things. It was all right.
How was that, making the transition from, did you find that it was almost too much creative freedom being your own boss, or was it sort of liberating to be able to do whatever
I
you
always
wanted?
wanted to just write and draw. I was never just, I want to be an artist. I never want to just draw Spider-Man or something. I just wanted to do my own comics and work with cool people, you know. But yeah, I probably bit off more than I could chew with that one at first, with like learning how to, I mean, doing a whole comic, 22 pages, is a lot of work. So doing it all yourself, where it's all on you, that takes a little more discipline, and so getting to that point was hard enough, and then figuring out, oh, I have to actually make it good now too. So that was a learning process. But that's why I didn't do Wormwood first, even though I had Wormwood in my head. But
you wanted to give something else sort of a test run before you moved on to the one that you
I'm glad I did that, because Wormwood went well, but it might not have gone as well if I did it first. So
Gotcha.
Wormwood's the stupid ideas I came up with in high school, because I watched too much Doctor Who. I have a dirty mind.
You did Choker recently as well, correct?
Yeah, did Choker with Ben McCool.
And that was through Image, right?
Yep.
I'm curious, you know, one of the questions we've been asking a lot of people in this series is sort of their philosophy on work for hire versus creator-owned comics, because it's...
Do you really want to get me banned from the industry?
No, I don't.
I have opinions.
I mean, I'd love to hear them if you feel comfortable sharing them, only because, you know, we've had on this panel, we know we've had people like Jerry Conway and Chris Claremont, who at the time they started working in comics did not have a creator-owned option. That was not even something that was sort of conceptualized.
Yeah, the landscape's pretty different now.
Now it's really different, and I'm just sort of curious what your outlook is.
But as of, because I took a little break from comics for a while, and I'm back now, but I'm not au fait with the complete current deal structure or offers that a lot of people get made, but it's still horrible. It's still, compared to, say, the real publishing industry, because I know people now who've had real graphic novels at real publishers.
Right.
The comic publishers generally, apart from Image, still control a lot of the right. I'm mostly known for creator-owned work, generally speaking, which is just a fancy way of saying new IP. I just create new things. I like to try and create new things. I did a Batman issue, but Batman's been around for 100,000 years.
Right.
So, but that was fun. But I like to create brand new things, and that's a hard sell anyway. But I generally only get paid money if they sell issues. I get a back-end royalty deal. And it's called creator-owned. And like I might own, generally speaking, a percentage of that, and often it's like 50% was the basic deal, 50%, and then the publisher owns 50%. And this is before I learned about reversion rights too, where so if a publisher or whoever the entity is doesn't do something with it for a set period of time, you get all the rights back, and then you can take it elsewhere, which is great. But my early work doesn't have that, so someone else already always is going to own 50% of it, regardless.
Gotcha. And
in that 50%, their people generally understood to be in charge of selling it to other media or doing other things. So creator-owned can mean, yeah, you get a portion of it, but it's not creator-controlled, which I'm all about now, and I'm about empowering creators to actually be in charge of their own work. I mean, a working relationship with someone else who owns part, it can be good or bad.
Right.
So, but creator-owned doesn't always mean creator-controlled. And with a company like Image especially, you own 100% no matter what. Like the classic thing they say is the only thing you own is the eye. So, or they own is the eye.
Right, the logo.
Image. So my philosophy on creator-owned is really hardcore. And a lot of the publishers kind of feel a bit like mini Hollywood moguls in that they want to control and accrue IP for themselves as assets. Even if they never end up doing anything with it, they want control of it, which rubs me a little bit the wrong way now that I know enough, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Which factors into how 30 Days a Night kind of happened in that I was out of the loop and I never got to do concepts or thing. It's not a bitterness thing, it's just you learn the hard way about what's possible and what's accessible to you and how to go about it. Everyone, I want to say a lot of comic pros now, because of the whole nature of getting anything optioned, everyone has sort of a Hollywood guy that they filter things through so they know what the hell is going on. I was at the beginning of that in the modern era to not know anything. So, but work for hire I don't care about. I just get paid money and I do it and I don't care. But if I want to do something that, because creator-owned, it's your baby. So you care a lot more and you want to know what's going on and you want to feel included at least. So it's a whole different proposition. And I'm all about creators controlling as well as owning a major proportion of what they do.
Gotcha.
That's why I formed a little publishing company with a couple of guys called 44 Flood.
Really?
That's all we're about. We don't want to own IP, but we want to promote the creator and have them have control on it. We're like a micro-publisher thing where we're cutting out the middleman of major distribution and just selling directly to people.
Gotcha. So are you doing digital sales or are you shipping directly to
We're
people?
creating artifacts of books, literally. We're not dealing with digital yet. So
Okay.
it's purely, we did a Kickstarter, because it's all Kickstarter first, for this gigantic art anthology. It's 18 by something inches big. It won't fit on any shelf, it's gigantic. It's called Tome, and it raised like $100 and something thousand. It was
Wow.
one of the most successful comic
Kickstarters.
at the time. Now everyone is huge.
Right.
But we're actually expecting today ship the books are going to come to our studio in Chicago. It only weighs 7 tons. So we're getting 7 tons of art book, and we're going to start shipping them out shortly, and then selling the rest of the copies because we have some extra copies.
Is it going to be physically larger than like the IDW artist editions?
I think it's actually the same size as those artist editions.
Wow.
Or maybe slightly larger. I forget. The Kickstarter went so well, we decided to make it bigger, so I forget the exact. It was originally 11 by 17, and then it's like, well, fuck it, we'll make an extra inch. Who cares? we got to ship the things. I didn't think about that. We're going to find a bigger packaging now. Oh, that's another $10,000.
Do you think Kickstarter is now a viable way to help creators kind of do their own work, their creator own work, or do you think that because so many people have sort of jumped on that Kickstarter bandwagon that it's almost oversaturated now?
I don't think it's, well, there's got to be quality control. I mean, quality control ultimately is the market. And the market should be, you know, if something's shit and you want to pay money for it and it makes money, well, you only got yourself to blame. Why are there so many Highlander films? You know? Kickstarter, the entire dynamic to my mind has changed in that you have major publishers, the big publishers who control gigantic IP and make billions of dollars off movies and pajamas. And then comics a little bit. But comics is the R&D of the thing, which is fine. That's all good. And then you have the middle tier of publishers that do a lot of licensed stuff and a few creator-owned things. And then there's Image, which is pretty much creator-owned. Right. And that's great. But they're still part of this older world mass market thing with Diamond and getting... You have to do a certain number of 1,000 issues to make money, to even have a return on that because of the costs involved in distribution and shipping and bricks and mortar stores and various things. And digital's a whole other thing. But then you have anyone with a vague name, I think, and a lot of starting up people, if they're good. Kickstarter is its own community now, and it has so many eyes on the world online, at least America and now the UK, because international sales may be a little bit different, but it's basically, if used properly, a brilliant pre-order system. If you have an idea and a few pages and show people with a great video that you have the will to make a book or a property, they'll fund it. They'll buy it before it's done. It's a pre-order system. You don't need a publisher. You can do it yourself, as long as you have access to a printer or something like that, which I think there should be some sort of angle of helping people connect to the people that will print their books. And then the distribution. I know someone who has, him and his husband and wife team, one year mailed out 45, I think it was something like 20,000 books.
Wow.
They were like hardcover little art books. But it can be done. You can do it in your own home. You can mail off. You know, if you sell 1,000, we sold 800 copies of this art book, and it was a higher price book, but that's 800 copies. It doesn't sound like much. It's a lot to mail off. It's a lot for a trade and the creator. But you make a lot more. You can make a viable living if you just want to do it yourself. Absolutely. Or you can then, because the money is financing the book to do the book, the time to do the book, you can still make a deal with a regular publisher. But if you do that, you shouldn't give them anywhere near the sort of deal that they want because you did it all yourself and you financed it yourself. They're paying for nothing. It's free content for them. All you want to do is use their distribution network. But Kickstarter is the key to that, I think. And I think the more people that use it, the better. If it becomes a normal thing, I mean, yeah, a lot of people are worried, like, oh, it might be a flash in the pan. But the whole idea of crowdfunding is taking on in there's whole different websites for various kinds of endeavours to have it crowdfunded. But I don't think that will die. I think the concept, having Kickstarter as the only one might not be healthy in the long run, but they're a great site. And because people like you buy stuff. Hands up who's bought something off Kickstarter?
That is a lot of hands. For anyone watching streaming, they can't see that.
Do people buy books off Amazon
more than
now?
50% of the audience, yeah.
I hope it becomes a normal thing, because anything that divests power from a few old players and democratizes the market, it's good for everyone. Well, it's good for us. Yeah. And I'm sorry if it's not good for gigantic corporations or a few people that own companies, as opposed to creative people who just want to get their work out there and make a living off it. That would be that's utopia, I think. I think everyone should want to. You've written comics.
I did, yeah.
You know, you want to just have successes. You know, if you can cut out the middlemen, who wouldn't want to do that?
It is good. We're going to open it up to questions. I have
no career at this point. No one's going to hire me ever.
No. I think you absolutely have a career, and we're going to open up to questions. I had two really quick things.
Thank you for letting me rant. By the way.
No. I mean, listen. This is a huge issue in the industry right now. It's fascinating, and it's great to hear, top-tier creators talking about this.
The only thing that upsets me is that people that do Kickstarters and they're successful, and then they just turn around and do a normal. I don't know the terms of their deals, but I'm hoping that they're not doing a regular normal deal with a publisher to just have it published in Diamond and stuff. They should be. They have so much leverage at that point that it's not funny, and that they shouldn't just turn around and give that away. They should really seize the day and say, well, look, you can get 5% of this book because you're going to print it, you're going to distribute it, but I've got all the finances ready made. It's fine.
So two quick questions. You mentioned earlier that you did do a Batman backup story.
Oh, I did. It was part of their digital thing that then saw print.
Okay,
so I did
gotcha.
A one shot basically.
Is there any character that could lure you into doing work for hire for a miniseries or whatever? Is there some iconic character you...
I'll do any work for hire, especially if it pays. I grew up reading Marvel and DC. There's a lot of cool characters. I'd love to do Lobo. Yeah, they'll give me Lobo.
Oh, nice.
DC people, hi. Lobo? Yeah, if people ask, it's surprising. I usually say yes.
A Ben Templesmith Lobo sounds amazing.
It sounds probably awkward, but I've never pitched a book in my life, really, except for 30 Days, which I didn't. It was involved in the pitch. I did some art, but I don't have to. Like I do. I'm so busy with my own stuff. I'm not one of those guys that sits there coming up with a whole bunch of pitches to show Marvel and DC or anything.
Right.
So I'm never in the mix for that stuff. But if people approach me, I'll probably say yeah.
Very
But
cool.
I'm not known as a superhero guy, but I'd love to do more Batman or Joker or Punisher or something. But my style is not necessarily suited to a lot of things, and it depends on the editor's vision. So, but yeah, I'd say yeah.
Right on. And along those lines, Dead Space, which is a horror trilogy video game. You were involved in doing.
Big now, I don't know.
It is. It is actually. It's a pretty successful series for EA. You did a comic book with Anthony Johnson, correct?
Yeah, we did.
And it was really cool. It was a prequel, right?
We did a prequel right when they were making the first Dead Space, and I went to EA and we watched them put it together because Anthony wrote the first one too, the game. So it was fun. Paid well.
Yeah, I've actually heard, and I don't know if this is again apocryphal, but I've heard that there were a lot of creators from like Rick Remender to Warren Ellis involved in sort of some of the Dead Space stuff.
To my knowledge, at least, they approached Warren to write it first, and he couldn't for various reasons. But he did some sort of early stuff, so they could still use his name in some bits. But then he passed it on to Anthony, so that was cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a really good experience working with EA. Then I played Mass Effect and learned that the whole EA politics and all that, and then the ending of Mass Effect. But EA treated me really well. Very different from working in normal comics. There's an attitude. This is just going to get me fired as well. But I'm my own boss, so who cares? And it's been talked about by a bunch of people. The attitude in general, comics is a very small industry, and very traditional, and very much a nostalgic industry, really, with the characters and such. But someone put it very succinctly the other day. It's like, in comics, you should be thankful you're working for them. The main, getting a job, blah blah blah, to be in comics. But in, say, my experience with EA and the larger creative field and industries, it's always been impressed upon me, and that they are thankful that you work for them. Now, all they did was say thank you, thank you, thank you, and paid me really well. Like advertising money and various other things is so much better, and it's like, yeah, I understand actors now. You're just respected for your talent more than, oh yeah, we are the awesome people. No, it's like, you are the awesome. It's a completely 360 different healthy experience. But it probably give you an ego too. But no, EA was great.
Yeah.
You really notice a difference from traditional comics of they are the gatekeepers, and that you should be happy to work for them. But at EA, it's like, thank you for working for us. It was awesome. They treated me really well. I don't know why I went there with that rant.
No. I mention it only because there's I think anybody who grew up in the, I don't even need to date myself, but like the 80s or the early 90s, there would be these sort of like
18.
Thank you, I appreciate that, Ben Templesmith. There were like these weird comic tie-ins where it'd be like an adaptation of the first Terminator movie in comic book form or whatever, and they sort of felt very boilerplate. The really interesting thing about that Dead Space prequel is it worked as a great comic on its own. It had this like unique mythology of the unitologists, and it was sort of a nice example of like taking some big corporate game, even though the game is unique in its own, and having this sort of standalone book that worked as a comic and didn't feel like, oh, it's this thing that is just a knockoff. It was
a
great.
prequel anime movie, I think, as well.
Yeah.
Jimmy Palmiotti wrote, I think, as well. But that is because the team that put the game together, the initial game, I'm not sure about the sequels, loved comics. One of them, he was an awesome guy. His name was Chuck. He was half Native American Indian. He was really short, built like a brick shithouse. I don't know, is that, he had muscles, right?
Yeah.
Him and his posse would go to Comic-Con every year and dress up as all of the X-Men, and they looked at, because they were like superhero portions. He would always do, I don't know, like, he was gay. And that's not anything to say that he loved costuming, so he went full ball into that. And like, they were fans. They loved comics, and they knew the landscape of comics and who would be, I'm known for horror, so it's like,
Right.
I'm doing a horror game, let me get that guy. This guy loved and lived and breathed comics, and that's why we were on that book, I think, and that's why it worked. It wasn't a boilerplate thing, and they wanted to do something new that was a good comic, not just a, okay, so licensed comics, boilerplate, this is an adaptation of a movie thing. They buy the license and then they get it done as cheaply as possible and just put it out there, hoping to trade on the PR and the marketing of the movie. If it's a movie that sucks, well, it's not going to do well anyway. But if it's a great movie, great. Most of those comics probably don't do that well, but they make their money back, so they're a good investment to do. But then you had like the Star Trek comic that came out recently. It was actually written, I think, by the original revamped comic, Star Trek, not the current one coming out.
Right.
Was written by, I think, one of the guys that wrote the screenplay. And his name counted towards, and so it really involved people from the movie. Like, it's like putting Joss Whedon's name on a book. When you do that, it's a sign of quality and a sign that, oh, well, this might actually be good. If the movie's good, I'm going to invest into that. So it wasn't a boilerplate, oh yeah, just adapt that bullshit.
Anyway.
That's how that goes.
Questions, guys? If anyone in the audience, yes?
I have a question about your work, though. Like, you have so many things. Like, whenever I walk around a comic book store, I see all your stuff, and I love seeing your stuff.
That's the comic store's fault, not mine.
But how do you do so much? Like, what is your work day like? How much do you work on it?
You're probably seeing about 10, I'm officially 10 years in comics this year, so you're seeing 10 years. One year I did 18 issues.
Wow.
That wasn't a healthy year, and that wasn't good quality work. That was when I was really young.
Yeah.
But I haven't done a proper comic, except for the Batman thing. I took like 2 years to not do much. I was very slow on Choker, and I'm sorry. I was burnt out and was doing like personal stuff, so. But I'm back now, and I'm doing a lot more comics, and art books as well and things. But I don't have a work regimen. It's just I sit there and draw. I sleep late, and then I get up. My day usually ends, if possible, at 4 a.m. But then I get up at 12. That'd be my perfect day. But it's complicated, but yeah, somehow I'm relatively quick. And I do pencils, inks, and colors. I do everything. Yeah, but you got to push yourself sometimes. So.
Right on. Other questions? Yes?
Do you have any news on Beltan?
I said it might come.
Felton?
Okay, it's
and
complicated.
10 grand also.
10 grand, yeah.
You've got an upcoming
I'm doing a book
project.
with JMS right now. Joe Michaels, the Babylon 5 guy. You know,
Michael
Joe
Straczynski,
I
yeah.
can never say his name right.
That's all right.
Straczynski.
Yeah.
He seems very nice. I'm doing a 12-issue maxi series with him. Fell, okay, I'll tell you all because I get the question the whole time. So, yeah. I have one issue of script. I could finish that tomorrow. It won't go to print. It won't see print because they need a few more issues from Warren, really, in the can for me to work on, to have ready before they'll solicit it and put it out again. Because one issue every 2 years is gonna be stupid. So I have to finish that issue, find the time. It's not like we get paid for it. So I've got to find the time to do that, which I will eventually. And then hopefully Warren will write some more, and I'll encourage him because he'll feel pressure finally because I've finished something. And then hopefully there'll be enough issues that we can put it out again. I know he wants to. He thinks some of those issues are really good, and they are. But he's afraid he can't match that. So we've got to encourage him, and he's afraid you guys won't buy it. So if he's listening now, hands up who wants to buy Fell.
Everybody, that's the
That's
entire
like 1,000
room.
hands.
Warren Ellis, the whole room, Warren Ellis, the whole room.
Yeah, so encourage him. Don't ask him about it. Don't badger him about it because he hates that, and I hate that too, but I'm fine. But just let him say, Warren, I'd really buy the fuck out of more Fell. Just say something pleasant like that. Just encourage him as a grass roots movement too.
You should send out the people with the Snowtown tattoos to politely knock on his door and go, I have a tattoo, Warren. You really need to.
At that point, he may buy a shotgun and start shooting. No, so it's complicated, but it's not complicated. But yeah, it will come back. It's just I've got to on the agenda. I have to make sure I pay my rent first, this coming back into comics right now. But after that, I'm going to start nudging him with new pages.
And 10 grand with J. Michael Straczynski, is that through which publisher?
That's through Image.
Through Image. And
it's
can you
all
tell
you.
us a bit about it?
It's like it's a love story with demons. Okay, so this guy, every time he dies, okay, him and his wife were murdered. He did a deal with some angel. It turns out they're a bit of a, I'm not going to say that word, that's a C word, that's bad. Angels are dicks. So he comes back to life, he has to like kill demon things or something. Every time he dies, he keeps dying, he comes back. But every time he dies nobly and altruistically, he gets 10 minutes with his dead wife in heaven or wherever it is before he has to be dragged back and then do it all again. 10 grand is his limit. If you pay him 10 grand, he'll do whatever you need to do to like, it's sort of like Magnum PI or something. Like he helps save people and he'll die in the process, he knows that. But if he dies altruistically, he gets 10 minutes with his dead wife. And so then there's a whole story after that. That's the concept, the basic concept. And I'm the artist on it, he's the writer. It's really his show. He controls the whole thing. I'm the artist for him on the book because he asked me to draw it. So it should be a good book.
That's great.
Yeah.
And
But that's why you won't see my name out there much because it's a JMS book mostly.
gotcha.
And I'll pimp it where I can.
Well, you know, as far as and are there other questions? Okay. I see.
Are you doing any more work with the Wormwood Gentleman Courts or
I will.
spin-offs, or you can just kind of?
That's at the same point as Fell right now. It's like as soon as I'm back on my feet with a few things under my belt, I'll come back to doing a proper. I have a story written. I just have to find the time to do it. So no one's paying. Like the thing with most of my work is no one pays me to do it. So I have to make sure I've got my expenses covered before I can then move forward. And I'm nearly there again. But yeah, I only make money if you guys buy it. So if you buy it, I'll do it. All right. Thank you so much for all the support on Wormwood because it's 7-8 printings now of the Volume 1 trade paperback. So it keeps going well. It's like the best thing I've ever done.
That's phenomenal.
People dress up as them too. It's for the thing that I've written, it's the best thing most successful thing I've ever had. So.
That's great.
Oh, it's a spotlight on a spotlight of 5 minutes.
All right. Any other questions? And again, feel free to ask them. I can't really see out there.
You can
that
ask me
well.
anything about most things, and I'll give you an answer. It may not be accurate.
Yes.
What do you enjoy doing besides comics?
Sleeping. I just got into wargaming, so like tabletop.
Oh, right. Oh no! Wow.
This thing called War Machine. It's like steampunk or something, but with robots. I don't know. Comics are, if they're your job, what are you going to do? You've got to find something else. I'm learning oil painting. I'm trying, yeah. I want to go legit. Like gallery stuff, maybe at some point. No, real oils. Real oils. I actually don't draw anything on computer. It's all layers, just with a mouse. I still use a mouse. I don't do anything on computer drawing. I use a mouse. That usually makes most artists who are digital artists, their faces go funny when I say that because they can't imagine using a mouse to do anything. Like they're all like with the pen on the screen now. So
What is it? The Wacom tablet or whatever? Or?
Yeah.
Where do you see the industry headed? Because obviously one of the biggest sort of discussion points has been that, you know, sales sort of were atrophying and now there's a bit of a boom, but it's definitely, you know, you'll see outliers like The Walking Dead doing incredibly well. You know, you'll have these big relaunches at the big two where first issues will sell very well, but the margins for canceling issues are becoming smaller and smaller.
Well,
So
the big two are a separate dynamic, I think, because they're predominantly superheroes. And you're talking about one genre when you're talking about them. And an audience that is probably very different in mindset, not to categorize everyone and stereotype them, but people who read Image comics are probably a bit more open to anything that might be new, because Image is all about just new, weird things. But if you've read Spider-Man all your life and you haven't read anything else, you're probably not going to want to read something else just because someone, you know, it's Spider-Man. You're used to Spider-Man. Regardless of who's ever done it, you're not reading it for the creator, you're reading it because it's Spider-Man. So there's a whole different dynamic there. But you need the big two with the whole diamond system and distribution for that whole thing to survive, that everyone else who's smaller still lives on. So I think, I don't know. That's why I'm encouraging Kickstarter and the whole, I call it like the cottage industry thing, where a creator can make a viable alternative living doing comics without even entertaining that system. But they can still use that system if they want, but they've got it covered otherwise. So, I mean, and the bricks and mortar stores need, you know, the diamond system still. So, I don't know, it's a transition. And then there's the whole digital thing, which will be a new thing. But people are never going to get sick of books. It's just how we end up getting them to the people. That, you know, Borders went bankrupt. So
Yeah, I think Barnes & Noble is like, there are very few left.
the bookstores are dying anyway, or it's a different dynamic. So you've got to figure out a way to sell smaller numbers, which is still completely feasible to people, just without having to have the mass distribution machinery that costs so much. So.
Speaking of distribution, and again, I don't want to get you in trouble with the comics industry.
I'm in trouble enough. Have you
but-
heard anything I
but,
say about this thing?
No, absolutely.
I'm
but
screwed.
I'm just curious, do you think, because I know for a lot of people that do creator-owned comics, for example, I don't want to get too technical, but the margins are so slim on that for a book to be able, that's creator-owned, to get out there. The difference between you actually having enough money to keep doing it and not having enough money could be like between 1,000 and 500 issues. It literally could be that small. Do you think piracy is hurting that, or is it, as some people say, hey, people pirate my comics and then they get introduced to it because they try it for free and then they actually buy the trade? Do you sort
I'd
of?
like to say the latter is true. I've never pirated a comic myself. I'm just lazy. I don't know how. But no, I'm serious. And I like physical copies anyway. I've never really read too many digital comics yet anyway. But I'm kind of more on the side that, look, first off, I'm never going to pirate something that I know that creator lives hand to mouth and that pays his rent to buy that thing. Or if I do, I'm going to spend my money on it later. It's a courtesy thing. Corporations, my morals get a little more unethical, whatever. You know, large corporations, they have it all factored in with their costs and various things. You're not hurting an individual as much. You know, like it's Metallica versus the guy down the street in the garage band. I'm not going to screw that guy, but Metallica or Lady Gaga, like they're gigantic and they, you know, I don't know. That's a blurry line. But I do think, because I'm big in Russia, because I'm pirated, but I'll never get to go to Russia because none of my stuff's actually in print. So, well, people know me. Apparently, I get a lot of emails. I don't know what they mean, but they're Russian. They like me. But, yeah, so that doesn't help me. But that's a whole different language.
Right.
So, because they've all read it there's no demand actually for the print books because they've already got my books. So that probably screws me. But I do think, I mean, there'll be a bleed through and it'll expose people to a wider range of work that they then may actually spend real money on. If they're reading comics anyway, that's a good thing, hopefully.
Yeah.
Because they'll buy a comic at some point.
Well, please, if anything gets through, please go to the show floor and pick up some comics, everybody. You guys, a big thank you to Ben Templesmith. Thank you so much for your time. That was great.
To that last question, my answer is I don't know.
No, that's a completely valid answer.
The answer to the last question was I don't know.
And Kelly's Pseudoconics panel will be coming up in just a few minutes. We're going to take a really quick break, and then we'll be back. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
Ben, thank you so much.
Is that all right?
That was awesome.
rambled a lot.
No, trust me, you were fantastic.
I'm not cohesive. I haven't had enough coffee.
No, you were incredibly cohesive. No